A 53-year-old woman walks to the market with her backpack on, right? Just running errands for her family. And what happens? She gets stopped by the Gestapo, right? Why? Because she fits the profile of someone who has been here even before white people came here, right? Because brown people were here before they came, yet this is a white supremacy agenda, right? In this recognition, we have to understand, and me coming from a Latino background, that Latinos and immigrants have to stop thinking that somehow they will be the special ones who won't get stopped. Because I see this in my community. My mom's a US citizen, right? But even then, we don't let her go by herself alone. And I understand that it's very frustrating for them to feel like they don't have freedom of movement, right? But ultimately, it is much more weight full on the family to have them in detention, right? Even my mom is a citizen, right? But I'm even fearful that they won't care that she's a citizen and they'll detain her, right? So in this recognition, immigrants or those who are vulnerable have to stay inside. It doesn't matter. Like, really, what you're doing is you're sacrificing your family's mental health because of the delusion that somehow you will be special, right? In this recognition, we have to acknowledge that I know how stubborn the Latino community is. Dios me va a proteger, right? God will protect me, but God isn't going to take you out of detention, right? This is coming from someone who is spiritual, who is culturally Catholic, right? So ultimately, we have to acknowledge that this is dangerous and our immigrants have to stop going outside. We have to make it difficult for these Gestapo to actually kidnap people, right? Latino citizens like me can make it harder for them by, fitting that checklist and wasting your time. But ultimately, the people who are most vulnerable have to stay inside. And I know that is, daunting, that is dystopian, but it's true and I care about my community. So you need to stop going outside. Paren de ir afuera. What we do have to recognize is that while no sort of accountability can happen right now because we are under this tyranny, we can blueprint what sort of accountability can happen in the transitional aftermath of this. And things that I've thought about is removing the passports, so making them void of every single agent within these different agencies, from the FBI to the ATF to the DEA to the ICE to the DHS, right? Any sort of agent who participated in the kidnappings, their passports stop working, right? Because the first thing they're going to want to do is leave, which is what the Yahtzees did, right? They're going to want to leave to Latin America. That's what the Confederacy did. They left to Latin America. So what we have to do is we have to cut off their passport access, right? And what's next? The termination across the board of every single individual who has participated in this without any benefits. And then what's next? Tracking of them, right? Because there's going to be documentation of who these individuals are. The government, if their establishment, isn't going to want to make that public. But I believe that it is in the best interest of public safety that if you are in the neighborhood of where one of these individuals live, then you should be capable of knowing that there is a ICE or, one of the kidnappers in your neighborhood and know who that is. Another method is the political consequences of banning them from elected office, from government, from working in law enforcement, from going to the military, right? And if they were in the military or are in the military, cutting off their benefits, right? Because they lost that in joining these Gestapo. No working in security in detail, right? No working in schools, no working in community centers, no working in hospitals. Literally banning them from certain fields because of what they did, right? They will be running for the rest of their lives, and we have to ensure that through political and social consequences, right? And this is the reality that we have to push in the aftermath, and we have to understand that the establishment is going to want to do what we did after the Civil War. We have to force them away from that, right? And also, we have to ensure that in the aftermath, we force this government to grant citizenship to every single individual who was detained and even deported. If they want to return, we're going to give them that back, right? We're going to bring them back. And all of this is going to be for nothing. And eventually, they're going to be the ones who face the consequences. And I do not believe that these agents are going to face criminal prosecution, right? Because ultimately these are foot soldiers. What we need is political and social consequences. We need them to forever be running and forever be tracked and no sort of passport, so they cannot leave this country. They are trapped in this country because of what they did, and they will never be forgiven. We will never forget. We ensure that.